Hello, my friends. And you are my friends. And sorry, I had to do that after last week.
I can't believe you stole that from me.
This is David Bixenspan here, and I am joined, as always, by the great Brian Last for another edition of the 605 Superpodcast. And got a lot of good feedback on last week's show with the one and only James E. Cornette. Well, he wasn't in character, so I guess it was James Mark Cornette. But how you doing, Brian?
I'm okay. I can't believe you stole my intro, you thief. You're a horse thief. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you. We got a tremendous reaction to that show last week, and we're very proud of it, very happy with it. And for those who have asked, and many of you have, we will be having more guests on the show in the weeks to come. Not every show. We don't want to hotshot the territory, but we will be having more guests as the show goes on. Maybe even Mr. Cornette again. You never know.
I would hope so. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a break for me to say something. Keep going.
No, it was.
I have nothing. Okay, well, I will say one thing that I think is important from last week's show, and it's something that Bix and I both wanted to bring out in the conversation. We're very happy that it came out, is about tape trading, because Jim Cornette is unique in that he was one of the first generation of professional wrestling tape traders, which you don't think about it this way, but they're very important to professional wrestling, especially to newsletter culture, to, now what's going on the internet, because it was him and that first class of people, the first people to buy home recorders, VCR or VHS or Beta. It was them who captured and recorded shows that, as we know, promoters didn't keep tapes. Promoters got rid of them. They taped over them. They destroyed them. But people like Jim Cornette and other people he mentioned on the show, Walt Wolanski, they taped these shows, they kept them, they traded them around, and it was that trading around which led to things like the Wrestling Observer newsletter, which really started
directly.
It started as Dave Meltzer trading tapes and creating a forum to communicate with the other tape traders he was dealing with.
Well, yeah, it was just that he didn't want to write the same letter over and over.
Right.
So he created a newsletter. Well, actually, no, it wasn't called the Wrestling Observer newsletter at first.
It was the Wrestling Observer.
Well, first it was the Wrestling Observer, which I think there was an Observer Radio. I want to say maybe earlier this year, last year, where Brian was trying to get Dave to explain why, if he realized that it was misspelled, and he was like, "Yeah, I do." That I guess he did it deliberately, that it was supposed to be stylized, I guess. So first it was the Observer, then it was the Observer, and then it was the Observer newsletter. But I think most people don't realize where the Observer newsletter came from was that it was, at first it was I believe, bi-weekly, legal-sized thing. It was a little bit more like some of the other newsletters. It had, Xeroxed articles and pictures and clippings, but it was, still the Observer. And then Dave quit or retired, or however you want to put it, because it was not the Dallas. It was when he started working for the San Jose Earthquakes, right?
I believe so. It was after he moved back from Texas.
Yes, for a what was it, indoor soccer league team?
That I don't know, but I believe he announced his retirement and said that he would continue producing issues until everyone had their subscription fulfilled. Which was. Then he just kept going. Right. He's still doing that.
Yes, the Wrestling Observer newsletter was to fill out people's subscriptions, but then people loved the new format, and yeah.
You know what's amazing, Bix? I used to call his phone number that was in the newsletter so often. They leave my thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle. That I can remember off the top of my head. It's Wrestling Observer newsletter, P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California, 95009, and it's $6 for 4 issues. But he doesn't do 4-issue sets anymore. Now it's a
no. He still does the 4. Oh, that's right. He changed it with the with the last time he did the price change because of the
double issue.
Well, is it? Oh, because so many of them are. Is that why? Because
it's if you read the it says this is the last issue of your subscription. It is, each set is 2 regular issues and 1 double issue.
Oh, okay. Because there was also the thing where the rates changed because he was told that they could no longer send the Observer without an envelope.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, so at least for the last couple of years now, I guess the Observer doesn't come in an envelope if you get the print version. It does come in an envelope.
Yeah, yes. It comes in an envelope. Although I would like to hear from someone else if they're having the same problem. My issues lately in the mail have become with the ink smudged a little bit on the left-hand side. It's been the last 4 issues in a row.
Wait, so you get the print Observer now?
Absolutely, I do.
Did you ever stop?
I stopped when I hated wrestling, and I just said, okay, I've had enough. I'm done with this. From like 2000 to 2004.
But you never stopped to switch to the website.
No, I always got. You know what? It's a ritual. I've been doing this since I was 13 years old. You wait for the Observer, you get the Observer, you huddle up in a corner, and you read this thing. I don't want to read it on a tablet or a computer. I want to hold it in my hands and file them away. And boy, I have so many of these things because I have issues going back to 84. You know, I bought back issues of everything I had before Meltzer was doing back issues when they were just like independent bootleg dealers of like, I have all these Observers. They're like $1 an issue. I bought everything. So I have all of these, and they're really hard to store. I got to tell you, but I have them all, and I'd rather hold it in my hand. I mean, I certainly appreciate the value of having a digital version of the Observer, but I love actually having it.
Well, I just send it to my Kindle, so it's like if there was no such thing as e-ink screens, I think I'd probably still consider getting the print version.
Do you format it to have the same appearance as the print version?
Well, on Kindle, definitely not. No.
Yeah. See, I like the Meltzer look.
But with the 8-point font and the...
Who are all the other guys? He has like an associate publisher and a publisher and an editor.
Okay, I have no idea who John F. Rod is, so don't ask.
Rad.
It's Rad?
Well, I have a friend. Well, I don't have a friend. He's not a friend of mine, but he's a friend of my cousin's, and his last name was Rad, and it was the same spelling.
And you are not my friend.
And you are not my friend. I can't believe you stole my opening.
I thought it's
but anyway,
opening, yeah.
Going back to the tape trading talk,
yes.
That is something that Bix and I are going to hope to have more of on this show is talks with the original tape traders, people who in the early 80s were part of that very, very small group that saved wrestling, got wrestling out there, and are the reason that today we can go back and watch old Memphis, old Japan, old everywhere. And we find it fascinating. We hopefully you did too.
I hope everyone did. It seemed like everyone did.
I do want to mention one other thing at the top of the show here today.
Well, I did want to mention the one thing everyone seemed fascinated with the tape trading discussion was the, I guess, urban legend that you could hook your telephone up to the antenna.
Yeah.
And get stations in from other cable, I guess, from other markets, which I guess that's an urban legend. I kind of hope it was true. I don't see how it could be.
I don't see how it could be. One of the things I loved about the interview, I hate to call it an interview, the talk we had with Jim,
yes,
was it was him presenting Kenny Bolin in a way that wasn't, just, not that it's silly. But
Kenny Bolin, not Star Maker Bolin.
Yeah, it was the real Kenny Bolin, just this guy who was a real big wrestling fan along with Jim, who still had his shady end. I mean, look, he had them taping Jerry Lawler shows in the department store, and then he didn't pay destroyed the tape. I mean, what a great story that was. But, like I said, I think that was a very special thing we had last week, and I'm a friend of Jim's. I'm a longtime fan of Jim's, and I think we had a very unique talk with him that no one else has ever had. So I'm very, very proud of that show. Like I said, I did have something I wanted to talk about at the top of the show. So for those who have heard me before on other things, specifically my popular award-winning appearance on Between the Sheets over the summer, considered one of the greatest podcast appearances anyone has ever had in professional wrestling.
Yes.
I talk about the 1995 Louisville Smoky Mountain show. Well, I shouldn't say that. USWA show featuring the heels from Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
During Fan Week.
During Smoky Mountain Fan Week. We referenced it last week with Jim Cornette. And after the show, I was messaged on Twitter by Memphis Wrestling at Memphis History. Is that what it is? At Memphis History?
Oh, look.
At Memphis History, who posts some really, really cool stuff. If you're into Memphis wrestling, as you should be, check him out. He posts some really cool stuff. I think his name is Travis. And he got in touch with me, and he mentioned that he liked the story, and he sent me his version of the story. He wasn't at the show that night, but he was around the area, and he mentioned that he and a friend of his were at a gas station about 20 miles outside of Louisville when we pulled up to a gas station, and that they went over to us. And it brought back some memories, something I didn't tell as part of the story.
Okay.
And I believe he may have been the guy, so it kind of answers the question for me. So here's what happened. On the way to Louisville, the Smoky Mountain Fan Week crew were split up into several minivans. My minivan was, I think Brian Hildebrand drove one, Tommy Noe drove another, Greg Greenland drove another, and D'Lo Brown, who was my driver. And we had a really cool van. It was me, D'Lo, I think Jason Campbell, who has one of the coolest websites of all time.
ProWrestlingHistory.com.
Oh, if you want to see those old Terry Justice newsletters and Shedlock newsletters and all sorts of stuff, check that out. And Masahori, a really good friend of mine from Japan. I think he's pretty famous as like the super fan from Japan, but one of the
yes, the guy who gets all the pictures of the wrestlers choking him.
Yeah, he's one of the great guys of all time. And basically, if you meet anyone who is an American who toured with All Japan, they'll tell you just what a fantastic guy he is.
Or I think any American who toured with any of the Japanese promotions that knew him, especially in the 90s.
I mean, for a long time, he specialized in just All Japan because he never went to New Japan. He only went to All Japan.
Yep.
And I think that all started because the first wrestler he loved was Killer Carl Cox and his feud with Dick Murdoch. That was like the first thing he fell in love with, and that was All Japan, and began like the Texas wrestlers in there, became his big thing. So we're in a minivan on the way to Louisville, and it was a long drive. Excuse me, it was a long drive from Knoxville to Louisville, maybe, I don't know, 5 hours, let's say.
Can I ask you a quick question before we move on? The tape I have seen that I guess Masa shot of you guys in the van, is this before or after the USWA show?
It would definitely be before because it was daytime.
Okay. I mean, in general, like, was it later in the week or?
I think it may have been that day.
Okay.
I think it may have been that day. That's the one with D'Lo impersonating the Hulk Hogan Dungeon of Doom skit?
Yes.
Yes, I think it was that day. So we had a fun van ride there. And Masa had with him all these Japanese newspapers. And I was sitting next to him going through them, and they were kind of cool because they had professional wrestling, baseball, but then pornography. And every picture of a sexual act had a different woman, but the same guy. It was the same guy in every picture screwing all these women.
Okay.
So I said, Masa, who is this guy? And he said, oh, in Japan, he is the master of sex. And D'Lo heard that, and he said, what? Give me that newspaper. I want to see this. This guy is the master of sex? I don't believe it. This guy? So we have this talk. It ends up being a lot of hilarity in the minivan. After the show, and again, listen to Between the Sheets from August of this year. You can find it on the Place to Be Nation.
I want PWO, PTV, and Podcast Network. I think it's episode number 5.
It's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll tell the story again. Maybe one of these days Bix will isolate just the story. We'll figure out something. But after the show, we leave. And again, we get chased out of Louisville. We get a police escort. It was a scary and fun thing. And we go to a gas station 20 miles out. And now we feel we're kind of safe. And there was like a Subway inside the gas station. And D'Lo is online with us to get food. And a couple of fans come up to him. And they say, hey, are you D'Lo Brown? Now, he's a little worried because it was a serious deal in Louisville that night. And D'Lo says, oh, no, man, I'm the master of sex. And I always wondered like what that fan thought. Those fans thought. I didn't realize until now it was this guy. It was the guy at Memphis History. It was him and his friend went to that gas station, and they were so excited to see Brian Hildebrand and D'Lo Brown that they came up to us. And that's why when they said, are you D'Lo Brown? He said, no, I'm the master of sex.
You know what? I think when the Between the Sheets happened, I think he did tweet me something.
Yeah.
About bumping into meeting you at the gas station. I think maybe he wasn't sure if it was you, and then there was something. I'd have to look back his tweets unless he direct messaged me.
Yeah, but that's the story. D'Lo Brown, the master of sex. That was, for some reason, he thought that having the idea that some fans may attack him, he wouldn't admit that he was D'Lo Brown, but the name he decided to say he wasn't, oh, no, I'm Joe. He said, I'm the master of sex. And it diffused the situation, even though it sounds like these guys were smart fans, so there wasn't going to be a situation. But in our minds, he diffused the situation until all these years later now, 20 years later, I found out it was at Memphis History.
Isn't the wrestling internet great? Isn't wrestling Twitter great?
It really is. I mean, just today, me and you were having a party on there putting scans.
And newsletter clippings, and Chris was too. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, it was a fun time.
No, I mean, just that you can all of a sudden, that he hears this and remembers this with you at the thing, and then just other stuff. Like earlier today, some of the stuff I was going through, like there was some Von Erich stuff. There was like an ad for the Von Erichs on PM Magazine from '81, and there were clippings of Austin, Texas spot shows, or I guess, I don't know if it's a spot town or not, but whatever, where there were a lot of misspellings. And I won't say exactly, but Kevin Von Erich told me a funny story that he DM'd me. I told you about it earlier. But that had to do with all that, with the spelling errors. It's just so, like, this is what wrestling on the internet is like now.
Well, you should tell the story, A, and B, I think it's pretty cool that you put this thing up there in passing, and all of a sudden Kevin Von Erich contacts you.
Well, he follows me. I've never actually had any interaction with him before, but he follows me on Twitter.
Watch out, Kevin. Bix, you follow Bix, he'll lead you right into the sea.
I don't want to say everything he said. Since he DM'd it, I don't want to.
Okay, we'll leave the mystery out there. Yeah. What did Kevin say to Bix?
It wasn't that. It was funny though. But
I put up a picture today of a contract signing in the ring. I think the Sportatorium, Bill Mercer's there, between Fritz Von Erich and Gene Kiniski for the NWA Championship, and Waldo Von Erich's there. And my caption was, after the contract signing, Fritz and Waldo had a brotherly chat about Lance's education, which I was very proud of.
Yes. Where was I? Oh, and was it yesterday where I found this thing where it was a Jonesboro show where they advertised that there was a dance after, and there was a DJ. Yeah, did you not see this?
I did not see that. No.
And everyone invited, and then I just tweeted like I have to know what Randy Hales remembers about this. So I tweeted at Randy Hales, and he didn't say share that much. It was just I remember some after the show dances, and I don't have to look at exactly what he said, but it's amazing that this is what we can do now. And obviously, I guess me being a whatever you want, writer of some what would the word be? Presence?
Prominence?
Relative prominence, I guess. That, I'm a little more likely to get certain people following me, but still, I mean, it's not like the interactions I'm talking about are that unusual, though.
Shit, Bix, what a missed opportunity for a classic Memphis moment. A dance party after a show. I mean, we had the concession stand brawl. What about the dance party brawl where there's dancing and a DJ, and that would have been the greatest thing of all time.
How could they not do that ever?
I know, they kept going back to the concession stand. Go to the dance floor.
And they did those type of brawls in Jonesboro, too. I mean, you saw that a few weeks ago when I was talking to Mark James on Twitter about that I didn't realize that they did Tupelo type brawls in the other smaller towns with the crappy buildings.
That's right.
So they really could have done a Jonesboro dance party brawl.
Speaking of Memphis and dancing, it leads me to Memphis and music. I recently watched again listened again to the old Jimmy Valiant song. What is it? Son of a Gypsy?
Okay, so wait, are we going to discuss whether or not it's a little funky Jew or a little funky Jew?
He goes, I'm a rocker and a roller, a little funky Jew. That's the greatest line ever.
So you do think it's Jew? I've had people tell me that it's not Jew.
I don't think it probably wasn't written as Jew, but I think
he enunciates it as Jew.
Yeah. By the way, I got to say something. I mean, there were some cool moments. I mean, I think the Rougeau Brothers theme song is one of the greatest theme songs ever. But I got to say, I kind of think Jimmy Hart is overrated as a songwriter amongst wrestling people. Because the lyrics in that song are just terrible. I'm a rocker and a roller, a little funky too, let's say. I was raised by a gypsy. Handsome's cool. It's like every Jimmy Hart song is like a sentence that is like 3 words and then it rhymes. It's never like anything.
Or I was walking down the beach looking for some action, listening to my favorite rock and roll station. There's some version of that in like 5 different Jimmy Hart songs.
Yeah. I mean, because I remember in Legends House when I watched that, it was like him writing a song with Hillbilly Jim, I think. And I was just thinking, man, you're really not good at this. I mean, no, I mean, I'm sure he's a great guy and I want to be nice to him because he has maybe a hidden closet of Memphis tapes, but he's really, I mean, when you think about the Gentry, everyone's like, oh, he was in the Gentrys in the 60s. He was like one of the many singers in that band. He wasn't like he was like sitting there writing like,
and not for the hit either. Like, right. I don't think did he write Keep On Dancing?
I don't know, but that is the hit. I mean, it wasn't like they had a big career.
Right. No, but I mean, he was not, I don't think he's the lead singer on Keep On Dancing.
No, he's one of 3 singers I could think. I think there were 2 like dancer singers, and he's one of them. And then there was like the main singer.
Right. But I don't know. I mean, so I'll ask you this: who is a better songwriter, Jimmy Hart or Jim Johnson?
Songwriter in terms of lyrics.
So you're just saying as a lyricist, you think he's overrated?
I'm saying as a lyricist, he's horrible.
But as a musician,
sorry, Jimmy.
But as a musician and a songwriter, perhaps an arranger even.
See, I think Jim Johnson's written some great stuff. Like some amazing stuff. Jake Roberts' theme song was really good. I recently watched a whole bunch of Miami Vice on Netflix, and I came to the realization that I can't believe I'd never thought of this before.
My God, Jake Roberts' theme song is Miami Vice. What?
No,
that's
the Heart Foundation.
Yeah.
That's Miami Vice theme song. That's like his take of Miami Vice. I'm telling you, go back and forth and think about where he's probably getting his influences from. I think the Heart Foundation, because again, like Bret Hart kind of played like, I don't know, it's like, you know, I guess you can kind of see him as being like kind of Miami Vice, like, you know, I don't know what, something about mid-'80s Bret Hart just screams like cocaine in Miami to me. And I think that's where that song came from. I really do. And he wrote some good stuff, but then, of course, the modern stuff, and I don't want to talk too much modern stuff, but like the Seamus one where it sounds like he's saying lobster head. And
well, I don't know how much of that I don't know how often he works. I mean, I know that song's a few years old, but
I think Rick Derringer is better than both of them when it comes to writing wrestling theme songs.
Well, sure. Although, as we learned recently, though, he did not write Real American specifically for the wrestling album.
Right, but he wrote Demolition.
Yes, and that's really only one song, but
yeah, but that one song is like amazing.
I'm trying to remember now. I don't think I actually read the second of the two oral histories. Isn't this amazing that we had two in 1 week? We had two separate 30th anniversary oral histories of the wrestling album online.
Yeah, I mean that second one had an interview, or you know, one of the participants was one of the people I find the most fascinating,
which was David Wolf. So I don't think I read that one yet. How was it?
I didn't read it yet either.
It was Vice, right?
Yes.
Vice Sports.
Yes.
Okay, I sent it to my Kindle, I think, but I did not read it yet. I read the Rolling Stone one was okay, but it felt too limited.
But it was three people. It was Rick Derringer, Hillbilly Jim, and
Jimmy Hart.
Yeah. But, you know, David Wolf I'm fascinated with, because here's a guy who's a big wrestling fan. Cyndi Lauper meets Lou Albano on an airplane. And next thing you know, he's in the video, and David Wolf parlays that into getting involved. And, you know, you may think, like, oh, he was just Cindy's manager. He didn't really do anything. First of all, him and Cindy own the rights to the name Rock and Wrestling. If you watch any of those old Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling cartoons, it says, you know, Rock and Wrestling is a trademark of Cyndi Lauper and David Wolf. And so much of what happened with MTV was David Wolf in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You know, I know Vince doesn't want to give credit to anyone else, but I think in those early days, you really think about it, Lou Albano brought them to the table, and then David Wolf kind of ran with it for a while.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Junkyard Dog and Vicky Sue Robinson on American Bandstand?
You know, I recently did, actually.
Because, like, I'm trying to figure out, and I was not able to find this out anywhere. I'm looking, like, because, you know, it's American Bandstand, so they're miming, but the backup band, along with Rick Derringer, it's like, I forget who one of the, I might be forgetting someone too, but, like, you got Rick Derringer, Carmine, Meatloaf, I don't think was on there. Oh, no, it was Rick Derringer, Lauper as Mona Flambe, and Carmine Appice. Huh. So was Carmine Appice on the wrestling album?
I don't know.
I mean, that's not a bad studio band there.
No. And, you know, Meatloaf played drums in the video for Land of a Thousand Dances.
Yeah, and I don't think I realized that Derringer produced the album either until I read the Rolling Stone article.
Yeah.
And Jim Steinman's involved, too.
Yeah, Jim Steinman's involved, too. There's actually recently was a documentary on Showtime about the history of Meatloaf, which ends up going into a lot of the history of Jim Steinman. Really cool for people who are wrestling fans interested in Meatloaf.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it. Is it good?
It's really good. I really enjoyed it.
Because you know the thing about the Jim Steinman song on that album.
That's the song, that was the Hulk song, the original Hulk Hogan theme song.
Right, which is also the Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling theme song, which he then repurposed as Ravishing for Bonnie Tyler. But but it's the same recording. It's not just the same song. You can tell it's the same backing track and everything.
Well, we'll stop with this, but one of the things the documentary goes into is that when Meatloaf and Jim Steinman had a bit of a falling out, Jim Steinman gave Bonnie Tyler songs that were supposed to be Meatloaf's. Total Eclipse of the Heart was supposed to be Meatloaf's song.
Had it already been, that's what I find striking about that. Not that it's the same song, that it's clearly the same recording.
Same recording.
Okay, so they had already recorded the backing tracks.
Obviously.
Oh, I mean for the Meatloaf stuff, they went to Bonnie Tyler.
No. That's what I mean. No, that wasn't the same back.
That was just stuff that was already written.
It was written, and he was going to do it on like Bat Out of the Hell 2, which was supposed to come out then, but didn't come out for another 10 years without that. Okay. Anyway, move us on to something else, Bix,
Yeah, what
please.
were we even talking about? Pibe Diaz.
Pibe Diaz. We have some Pibe Diaz news. Bix, break the news.
Okay, so apparently he's supposed to be a soccer player, maybe? I guess.
Well, someone on Twitter hit us up and said that, there was a soccer player and his nickname was El Pibe and his number on his uniform was 10, Diaz. So we think it's based on him. And then someone else jumped in and said, no, you're wrong. It's a different player. It's based on this other guy. But if the idea is that he's El Pibe Diaz because there's a soccer player named El Pibe who wears the number 10, it doesn't explain the first guy with all the dancing women in pink overalls. Mm-hmm. And the second guy with all the children wearing Martian antennas.
Right. Why is there also a Chespirito connection?
Yeah. So the mystery still persists. It will not end until we get one of the LP bays on this program. So if we have anyone listening in Argentina, ¿Cómo está usted? See, I learned, Bix. I learned from when you corrected me a couple weeks ago. Let's see if we can get one of the LP bays on the show. I have someone who could translate if they don't speak English. But that is one of our goals for this show.
So, moving on. It's Christmas week. Not that we care, but I love how you just no-sold that and you're letting me hang myself.
Yeah, I feel like you can accept the controversy more than I can. But, it's interesting. Has there ever been a wrestling promotion that promoted anything around Hanukkah?
World Class should have.
Well, they were in Israel.
When they were in Israel, I mean,
Vince McMahon Sr. was in New York. I'm sure there must have been a garden show at some point during Hanukkah.
Well, the thing is, though, Hanukkah is, as no one who's not Jewish seems to realize, Hanukkah is not actually a major holiday.
Yeah, I don't agree with you.
Well, it's not a major, it's relatively speaking. It's not, well, look at there are a lot of Jewish holidays. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a major holiday. In
the grand scheme of things, here's how
it is not as important.
I'm going to rank the Jewish holidays,
but it's not as important as Christmas is to Christians.
Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Passover, Hanukkah. It's one of the big four. It's on the Mount Rushmore of Jewish holidays.
So for Christianity, it's Christmas, Easter. Would you say those are tied, or is Easter technically more important?
I don't think they're tied because Christmas, I still feel, I feel like Easter is too much about the bunny.
Okay. I love how everyone listening to this is probably horrified, right?
Yeah, now you're letting me hang myself. But no, I think Christmas is bigger than Easter in my eyes. And I live with someone who's not Jewish. Okay. So I have her perspective on things. I feel like Christmas is the big one for the family, for, the kids especially. I feel like it's much bigger than Easter.
Right.
Around here, at least.
Right. Easter, across religions, Easter and Passover, the ones that actually tied together, because if both were using the same calendar, Passover has to happen before Easter.
Yes,
but they in practice they don't, because we go according to the Hebrew calendar, and Easter is set. However, why are we talking about this anyway? Wrestling on Christmas.
Wrestling on Christmas is something you don't really see as much now, but it was a big deal for so many years. The two big holidays were Thanksgiving and Christmas, where the day after, well, actually, I guess on Thanksgiving would happen the day of, and on Christmas would be, not Christmas Eve, but actually Christmas. Yeah. You'd have these big shows. When I think of Christmas wrestling, the first thing that comes into my mind is World Class Championship Wrestling. Yes. Because they had those Christmas Star Wars, which were just massive, massive shows with massive angles that had repercussions throughout the year. Right. In the 1982 Christmas Star Wars had the famed Kerry Von Erich Ric Flair cage match, which led to the Freebird feud. And, one of the things I find fascinating about that is it's almost booked in reverse, in the sense that it's all lined up, that cage match. Gary Hart booked it so that everything's lined up for Kerry to win. Almost like the way a heel would have it lined up. Right. Kerry has his, the guest referee is chosen by the fans as Kerry's friend Michael Hayes. The enforcer at the door is Kerry's friend Terry Gordy of the Freebirds. The Freebirds and David Von Erich had worked together earlier that night. It's almost, it's like if you watch it through special goggles and imagine that Ric Flair's the babyface, it makes more sense booking-wise than what it actually is. But of course it worked. Although I'm one of those people who definitely thinks that the match should have ended. He should have been pinned right after the door hit him in the head.
Or they could have done the ref stoppage thing if Flair keeps attacking him, but you don't have Kerry sort of make the comeback like he did.
Right. I just feel like that kind of, for me, that kind of takes me out of it.
Well, it's Von Erich's.
Well, let's see. That card, here's that card. It is December 25th, 1982. 12,000 fans in Reunion Arena, Dallas, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Adias defeated Frank Dusek.
Wow, that sounds terrible.
It does. I like Frank Dusek as a commentator, though, I gotta say.
I guess.
Lone Eagle defeated Little Tokyo.
I would hope that Lone Eagle is also a midget wrestler.
I would hope so. Jose Lothario and Al Madril, and boy, do I not want to watch them as a team, defeated the Magic Dragon and the Checkmate.
That could be okay.
It could be okay. I don't know. I'm not an Al Madril fan.
Well, who is?
David Von Erich defeated Bill Irwin in a singles match for the NWA Texas Heavyweight Championship.
Okay.
And then here was the big match that set up everything that happened later on that night. David Von Erich and Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy of the Fabulous Freebirds defeated Tom Steele and a phony Ben Sharp, and the actual Iron Mike Sharp, who was brought in for this one show.
Yes, real Mike Sharp Jr., fake Ben Sharp Jr.
Now, this was going to be the Freebirds, all three of them.
Yes.
Buddy Roberts against Ben Sharp, Tom Steele and the Sharp Brothers, the phony Sharp Brothers.
Yes.
For the 6-man tag titles. And they did something where they said that Buddy Roberts couldn't make it to the arena.
Shocking, I know.
Yeah, well, he probably was under the arena. And the Freebirds needed someone to help them, and they got their friend David Von Erich, who had just wrestled. He had just defeated Bill Irwin. And they together won the 6-man titles. And David Von Erich right away relinquishes his claim to the title. Says, I helped you guys out. You're my friends. Buddy Roberts can have it. And the Freebirds are the 6-man champions.
And wasn't it something like, I helped you out when one of your brothers wasn't there, and I'd expect the same from you? Something like that?
Exactly. It was actually really set up nicely. And then Kevin Von Erich defeated King Kong Bundy by disqualification. And then here's the big one. Ric Flair defeats Kerry Von Erich 18 minutes and 43 seconds in the cage match. And again, the Von Erichs had just helped out the Freebirds, and then the Freebirds stick it to Kerry. Although it's kind of weird. I mean, again, it's all set up. It's all booked weird. Kerry gets upset because Michael hits Flair and then wants Kerry to take advantage of it because he did something to help him.
Right.
But, you can't. The Von Erichs are just like so holy. I'm trying to think of a better word. I'm sure there's many better words than that.
Well, this was airing on the Christian Broadcast Network.
They couldn't do it like that. There couldn't be any cheating involved. So that started the fight, and everyone knows what happened there. And then the last match on the show, a $10,000 on a pole battle royal. Ken Mantell won. Well, funny thinking about what happens next. Defeating the Spoiler, the Checkmate, Frank Dusek, Ben Sharp, Tom Steele, King Kong Bundy, Wild Bill Irwin, Mike Sharp, Bugsy McGraw, Al Madril, Jose Lothario, David Von Erich, Brian Adias, and the Magic Dragon.
Now, I know it came out eventually who Tom Steele and fake Ben Sharp were, but I don't remember who they are.
I don't know. I'm going to click this and see what happens if I click Ben Sharp. Kelly Kiniski.
Oh, that's right. Okay, and who is Tom Steele?
Tom Steele is Gene Pettit. Oh, that's hillbilly cousin Luke.
Okay.
Well, that was 82, and then they followed it up a year later, 83. They had the Loser Leaves Town match. Here's Christmas Star Wars 83.
Yeah.
The main event was Kevin and Mike Von Erich defeating Terry Gordy and Buddy Roberts in a no DQ Loser Leaves Town match, and the loser would have to leave the territory for 1 year.
And then, of course, so Michael Hayes' Santa was the following year?
No, it was this year.
Or was that night? Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm trying to remember which match that happened in. I almost feel like it happened.
I think it was that match.
Was it that match?
Yeah.
And it's funny, too, because Michael Hayes did the Santa thing where Santa comes out and hurts the Von Erichs. And that was done a year earlier in Florida on Christmas Day.
With Jake Roberts, right.
Right. And that was the Dusty Rhodes Loser Leaves Town match, which, of course, led to the Midnight Rider.
Yeah. So...
One more thing I'm looking at here that's a little interesting. December 25th, 83, Jim Crockett Promotions ran 2 shows, Greenville, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina.
Uh-huh.
And on both shows, Roddy Piper wrestles Greg Valentine. So this is after he had already debuted for World Wrestling Federation.
So wait, when was his debut? What date? Because I'm trying to remember. Because did he work?
Or maybe not.
No, because I don't think he worked till the Pennsylvania tapings at the beginning of the year.
No, well, he was on the St. Louis tapings, wasn't he? But was that the 27th? Was that?
I'm not sure if he's on the St. Louis tapings. On the 27th.
I'm not sure either. But he worked for Crockett on the 25th. On Christmas, he worked for Crockett.
Now, Crockett, though, he did right by Crockett, though. So, I mean, even if he started quickly with WWF, I mean, it's not like he didn't do what Hogan did.
No, I think the only time in the early days he worked against Crockett was when they did a Rick McGraw tribute show.
Yes, because that was in the Carolinas, because that's where McGraw was from, and WWF did the Rick McGraw benefit show, right?
The St. Louis taping I was right, December 27th in St. Louis.
And but I think it's the debuts of Hogan, Schultz, Okerlund, manager Mad Dog Manigoff, and Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis.
Okay, I thought Piper was on that too.
I thought he was too, but I think it's just Schultz.
Okay, I will take you at your word. Although I question your word.
Okay. Have you ever seen those St. Louis shows?
I've seen bits and pieces of them. They're interesting.
Yeah, they're interesting. Well, because they went back into the ballroom. They're not in the studio in the hotel anymore.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, that first taping, there were like 8 guys there. So for like a month or whatever of St. Louis TV, it's just the same however many guys.
Yeah.
And I don't think they ran that many shows at the Chase itself, though, even if the show was still wrestling at the Chase for a few years.
No, I don't think they did at all. I mean, was it just that taping at the Chase?
No, they ran a few more. They ran at least a few more through like June.
Because they were filming at the Keel when they were running the Keel at that time.
Right.
Because I seem to think that a lot of it was the Keel where Gene Okerlund interviewed wrestlers against the ring while the audience was there. I thought that was the Keel, actually.
But he did that at the Chase too.
Okay.
But anyway, as far as the holiday thing, I mean, WWF does do their Christmas week tour of major markets, so they sort of have a thing, but not really. I mean, I guess it's the thing you don't really have though without territories, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was tradition built in, and it wasn't just everyone thinks Crockett territory and world class, but it was everyone. It was Georgia. It was. I actually have some Nick Goulas programs, and Nick Goulas was running a big holiday shows even for like the 4th of July. Yeah,
and in Canada they do Boxing Day shows too. The next day on the 26th. WWF didn't do the Christmas show thing, but they do the at least this time they did. They did the Garden show on the 26th. Yeah, I mean, to me, I don't know, the Christmas thing. I guess because the Christmas thing is almost more natural. It doesn't fascinate me as such as the Thanksgiving thing, because as we were talking about a little before we started, the idea of Thanksgiving dinner being in the early afternoon and then having nothing to do is so foreign to me, because that's never how my family did it.
I've never had Thanksgiving dinner, before sundown. Yeah.
I mean, maybe you might be there before sundown for to watch a football game or something at your if you're at a relative's house or whatever, but. I don't know, is this a Southern thing or?
That's an interesting question. I mean, it's only Southern territories I could think of who did it.
Because I don't think AWA
wildly successful when they did it.
And I don't think AWA did Thanksgiving night, right?
I don't know. I can't say if they did or didn't. But for instance, the Christmas show we just said, the 82 Christmas Star Wars, at that time I think drew the biggest gate in the history of Texas wrestling.
Yes, I believe that's true.
Like $102,000. So, I mean, those were the 2 biggest nights of the year for the wrestling companies, wouldn't you say? Christmas and Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
That's what Jim Cornette tried to do at Smoky Mountain Wrestling. He obviously had the Thanksgiving Thunder tour and then he had Christmas Chaos. He was trying to bring that back and build to those big holiday shows.
Although his biggest shows ended up being during the summer.
Right. What did Memphis do when it came to Christmas and Thanksgiving?
I don't think they were big spectaculars. I'd have to look as far as in general. It's just, I love the idea of it though, that you have these big holiday shows and no one even 4th of July or anything, Memorial Day. like World Class, I feel like they had the best handle on it by just doing a major show on every big holiday.
Yeah. They were perfect. I mean, those are great television specials.
Yeah. Is it me, or is this not leading to us as productive a discussion as we anticipated?
No, I mean, we should let everyone know. Well, at least I'll speak for myself. I kind of feel sick today, so if I'm dragging, if I'm killing the show, I apologize to everyone.
I don't know. Let's see if we can jump off with it to something else. I don't know.
Here, I just pulled up one of my programs from July 4th, 1977, Nick Goulas. So this is the Monday, July 4th show for Nick Goulas in Birmingham. And the main event is, let's get to this.
Well, that's the thing, too, with a lot of territory. If it's a weekly territory, it's just going to be whichever. A lot of cases, it's just going to be whichever city you were in that day. Like Memphis, I don't think is going to restructure their loop for the holiday. Right.
The card here was Jackie Fargo over Don Kent, Crazy Luke Ram and King Ripper Collins over Tojo Yamamoto and George Nick Goulas. That's how he's building the program, George Nick Goulas.
Like David Bruno Sammartino.
Right. This match has no listed winner or loser. Sugar Ray Candy and Pistol Pez Watley against Gypsy Joe and the Zebra Kid. The Samoans over Cowboy Frankie Lane and Ricky Fields, and Joey Rossi over Dr. Death. Coin flip could determine order of matches. What? Who's flipping the coin?
Nick Goulas? I don't know if I trust him with it.
Note, matches subject to change without notice due to conditions beyond control, such as injuries, illness, or accident.
I'm surprised Act of God wasn't there.
There's a guy all over this program. He's like their big sponsor, it seems. He's the official timekeeper also. Taft Epstein, a Jewish name in Birmingham, Alabama. Taft Epstein of Epps says he may not be a champion wrestler, but he is a champion when it comes to diamonds, watches, watch repairing, or just anything in the jewelry.
Oh, he was the jeweler.
The jeweler.
Of course he is.
Cheerful credit. Epps Jewelry. 2 cheerful stores. Come on down. Epps Diamonds, registered and guaranteed from $37.50. Of course, the Jewish guy's the jeweler.
Yeah. What were you expecting?
A giant photo of Nicholas's head on the cover of the program.
Of course. I'm just looking at Memphis's Christmas week show for '82.
And what was
it? That was the Lawler's unrecognized AWA title win over Bockwinkel, where they held up the title.
Oh wow! So that's a really big one.
Yeah, big crowd, 10,086 people. So I guess big.
That's the one. Nick Bockwinkel is one of my favorite little things in there. Where that's the one where he had his foot on the rope and they counted the pin, right?
And then he cuts that promo on Lance Russell at ringside after.
Where he claims that the bottom rope in this part of the country is like 6 inches higher than it is anywhere else in the country, which is just such a plausible excuse. It's just so good. Lance is like, Nick, wow. He's like, Lance, the bottom rope in this part of the country is 6 inches higher than it is anywhere else in the country. It's so good. I hate that Nick Bockwinkel died, and he was what a nice guy. I recently tweeted the autograph picture he gave me after I did commentary with him, where he said, "I'll always be first, even though my last name is last." But the one good thing that has come out of his passing, and that really sounds bad to put it that way, but is I feel enough people are now really appreciating him. He may have been the best world champion of that era, and I'm not taking anything away from Ric Flair or anyone else, but the AWA champions, you think about him during that run in the early 80s, he went to Southwest, he went to Memphis, Calgary, Houston. He was a traveling champion.
Even to Crockett.
Did he go to Crockett?
Late 70s at least, yeah.
Huh? As the AWA champion.
Yes, Toronto,
yes, that's right.
I think Montreal, Hawaii.
Just him and Lance Russell together. It's like too much class for Russell.
I know.
It's too much class.
Well, that's how Lance would describe him, too. Like, if you asked him about Nick Bockwinkel, one word, class.
I don't know why this made me think of it. I remember Jim Cornette years ago on the first Fan Week shoot interview. He was describing how he was confronted to join what was at that time the Real Wrestling Hotline. It was something created by Jim Hurd, believe it or not, with Lance Russell.
Yes.
And it was like they had John Arezzi, Dave Meltzer. I don't remember if Wade Keller was on it.
Steve Beverly,
Jim Cornette they got on.
I think John Arezzi.
I said John Arezzi.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And the way Jim explained it, it just still makes me laugh. It's just such a quick thing, but he said, "Oh yeah, Lance Russell called me up and he said, Jimmy, it's Lance, partner." Yeah,
because that's exactly how Lance talks.
What a national treasure Lance Russell is.
Oh my God, we should have him on soon. We should.
I would really like that. That would probably be a lot of fun. We should have Lance Russell on the show.
Yes.
And we could talk about how bad Jimmy Hart's songwriting is.
Oh, come on, Brian. We can't have that.
That's one of my favorite things. You had Pete Letterberg on your Between the Sheets show, and you talked about that famous WFIA 1984 angle where Pete and Howard Baum present Tag Team of the Year to the new Fabulous Ones, and then they turn on each other. Well, Tommy Rich attacks Eddie. Eddie comes out all bloody and apologizes, suckers Tommy Rich in, and what is going to go over really well on our playlist. And then as they're walking away, Eddie attacks Tommy Rich. And you don't see it. You don't see the moment he attacks him. What you see is the greatest thing. What you see is Lance getting ready to pitch to the next thing, and you see his face. And Lance Russell, more than any other wrestling announcer ever, could show you disappointment. He wasn't mad. He was disappointed in Eddie Gilbert for doing this. And that look on his face, the moment when Eddie attacks Tommy Rich and you don't see it, all you see is Lance's face, is one of my favorite things in wrestling history.
Absolutely. I agree. It's so perfect. I think when I was writing the Eddie Gilbert article for Fighting Spirit about a year ago, I remember asking Pete about that because that's my favorite thing about it too. I think he said something like, well, that the camera guys and all that were smartened up in Memphis, so he's fairly sure that was deliberate.
One of the things that used to go over really well at those tape parties they used to have, if everything now has been seen because of YouTube, but back then when you got a hold of something, it was a big deal. And when I started showing people at my old tape parties the famous Demente Negro, Austin Idol as Demente Negro, wearing a mask to present Lawler with a trophy in Lawler's handwriting, by the way. If you look at the trophy, it's in Jerry Lawler's handwriting.
It's the same bubble lettering that he would do on the programs. And yeah.
It was for Wrestler of the Year in Mexico.
Or Mexico's most popular wrestler, whatever it was.
Because they said that the Memphis Wrestling was on the satellite in Mexico, and Salvador Luderoth had sent up Demente Negro, also known as the Big House. Was that what he said? He goes, Demente Negro, the Black Diamond, also known as the Big House.
I don't remember that part.
He does. He goes, the Big House, which is funny. And then, of course, Demente Negro sounds just like Austin Idol when he starts yelling, numero uno. And then he, of course, attacks Lawler. And this is one of those times where Lance Russell gets a little upset. And the first classic line he had is, because Hector Guerrero comes out there to try to help, he goes, Hector, you tell him in Mexican to get out of here. And then, again, another one of those great Lance Russell moments where he doesn't really even say anything. When Demente Negro finally takes off his mask and reveals himself to be Austin Idol, Lance just goes, oh, I knew, he doesn't even say I knew it. But
he was like,
And Austin Idol immediately turns around and starts yelling, shut up, banana nose. But it's just Lance's reactions. Lance was just so real, and he brought so much class to that program. And just him and Dave Brown, it's like the ultimate buddy film. It's like just these two guys sitting around. You can see them sitting on fishing somewhere.
Right. Well, Dave's gotten it perfect in The Observer when he's talked about them the last several months. It's like what they brought was that it came across so well that they were such good friends, and with their announcing style, it was like you were watching wrestling with your buddies, and that made them more credible and everything.
How often do you think Dave Brown was sitting next to Corey Macklin just thinking, God damn, I miss Lance. Why did he go there? Why did he leave?
This guy clearly loves Lance. He's clearly trying to sound like Lance.
I never thought of that. You think Corey Macklin was trying to sound like Lance?
Oh, are you kidding me?
I never had ever thought of that before. Wow.
Think about his delivery and the way he would try to draw out words, and he's like, well, the king.
Never and ever put two and two together there. You're blowing my mind right now.
I mean, it's true, though, right? Think about it.
I see it. I mean, I'm not 100% convinced, but I see it enough that I'm like, wow, I can't believe I never had thought of this before. Wow. That's really something.
Corey, well, I'm just trying to think who else. So Corey Macklin or Michael St. John, death is not an option.
Corey Macklin for the enthusiasm.
Okay.
Michael St. John just didn't do anything for me. He was just too bland.
I'll go with that.
Yeah. Death is not an option.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, let's play this game now. Let's see. Death is not an option. Lord Alfred Hayes or David Crockett?
Are we talking WWF Lord Alfred Hayes or?
Yes, we're talking commentator WWF Lord Alfred Hayes versus. Look at him. Look at him, Tony. Look at him. Look at Mackin.
Right there. There he is. Tony.
Just how did he end up as the commentator? I know he's the brother of Jim Crockett, but still, just look at him. Just look at him. Look at him.
He wasn't always that bad.
No, he got one. Although my favorite David Crockett moment ever, and I wish I could find it. I actually went looking for this recently. I couldn't find it anywhere. I know I have it on like a DVD somewhere, and I can't find it, and I couldn't find it on YouTube. Is when in 1981 he has to make the announcement that Ric Flair won the NWA Championship on the show. And he begins the show, and obviously what he's going to try to say is, ladies and gentlemen, we have big news today. And instead what he says is, lady and Jelm, lady, one lady, and Jelm, Gelm, lady and Jelm. I would kill to see that footage again.
Somehow that reminds me of, remember the Hulk Hogan, Nancy Kerrigan angle thing?
Oh, of course. That was it during Fan Week. That was 95.
That's right. So as Shivani's just lamenting everything, and the officials come out to tend to Hogan. He's like, "Oh God, I'm sorry. It's terrible. There's Greg Gagne."
Why would he say that?
Because Greg Gagne was there, and I guess that was completely terrible.
Did Greg Gagne take credit for that, for booking that?
I not that I've heard of. You mean like he invented the UFC?
Well, he didn't say he invented the UFC.
He said his dad invented the UFC.
I mean, Bill Watts said a similar thing, didn't he? That he had the idea for some kind of shoot fight.
I've never heard that.
I think I have. That Bill Watts said he had the exact same thing. He had an idea for a shoot fighting kind of organization, but he couldn't put it together.
Yeah, but Greg Gagne said that it was his dad was at a USA wrestling meeting, and Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta were there. Oh,
I didn't know that part. That's
yes, obviously.
He really? Wow! What the hell? That's such a bizarre claim.
Well, anyway.
Anyway. So, I want to talk about something. I'm going to jump off somewhere in a different direction.
Of course.
I feel like now we're picking up steam.
Yes.
On the show. Probably the Advil I took is kicking in. So, last week we have Jim Cornette on. James from Kentucky. And me and Jim started talking about our friend, Dennis Carluzzo. Unfortunately, Bix, you never got to meet him. I think you would have really got a kick out of him. Just one of the great guys ever. If you were on his team, he was great. I know there are plenty of people who will say, "Oh, Dennis this, Dennis that." Dennis was always great with me, and I saw him great with lots of other people. And he did so much for the Gilbert family too. Tommy Gilbert just died, and I got to thinking about it because I got to know Tommy a little bit when he would come up to these shows, the Eddie Gilbert Memorial shows that Dennis ran 3 years in a row. I got to drive Tommy Gilbert around a little bit, and he was such a nice guy. And, Dennis did that. He wanted to make sure people didn't forget Eddie Gilbert. And I want to make sure people don't forget Dennis. So Jim Cornette had an idea for Dennis of the Week, a Dennis Carluzzo story every week. And this may be something where we get some outside voices to record some stuff that we could play for you, telling some Dennis stories. But I'm going to start this week. And let me preface this by saying, I heard this story from Dennis, I heard this story from Jim Cornette, and I heard this story from a couple other people. So I'm putting everyone's pieces together. So, Jim Cornette, I want to say WWF ran a show in Philadelphia, let's say, and they were staying at a hotel outside of Philadelphia. And because Jim and Dennis were really great friends, Dennis and a couple of his people, probably his son Mark, probably a few other friends, went down to the hotel to hang out with Jim. But Jim was busy in a WWF booking meeting. There was a conference room, and in there was Jim, Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, Jim Ross, Bruce Pritchard, maybe one or two other people. But they were in a conference room where you could see in it. There was like a window that the window shade wasn't drawn, so he could see them in there.
Okay.
So Dennis had an idea. Now, to take a step back, there used to be a fan, and I don't know, he may still be around, and I'm not trying to make fun of him or anything, but his name was Dave Bobkratz. As some people called him, the 35-year-old kid. He looked like a 12-year-old, even though he was clearly not 12. And you would see him like really enthusiastically cheering in the crowd and various things. He went to a lot of ECW shows because he's from that area.
So it sounds like in many ways the Rob Naylor of his era.
Isn't that your buddy?
No, I'm saying, but looks much younger than he actually was. Very enthusiastic.
I don't think it's fair. I don't know Rob Naylor, but I've seen him on things. But Rob Naylor, he doesn't look like he's not dressing like he's a 12-year-old too.
No.
It was both appearance and dress and behavior.
Okay.
At times that made you think he was a kid. So Dave Bobkratz is also in the hotel with a lot of the other fans from that area. You know, the big thing with fans, I don't know if it's everywhere, but especially was around Philadelphia, was the regulars at ECW or any of those shows, the old Good Heart shows, or the NWA shows, they would all hang out at the hotels when they knew the wrestlers were there. And just hang out with each other, eventually bump into some wrestlers, get to know each other. So Dave Bobkratz is there. And Dennis can see into this conference room, and he could see that Vince McMahon and his entire brain trust are in there. So Dennis gets an idea. Now, this is the part where I don't remember exactly. Let me preface it by saying that. Either Dennis did it, or Dennis had someone do it. And I think it may have been the latter. But all of a sudden, from one of the phones in the lobby, someone calls the front desk. And they say, "Hey, you see that guy over there with the glasses and the hat? Can you get him to the phone, please? I need him." And it's Dave Bobkratz. And they get him on the phone. And he says, "Yes, hello." And I said, "Dave, hey, buddy, it's Shane McMahon. Can you do me a favor? Can you go and get us all a bunch of sodas and bring it into the conference room? We're really thirsty." And, you know, of course, he was excited. He said, "Oh, right away, Shane. I'll do it right away."
Now, I have a question. Has Shane been on TV yet? So would people know his voice?
I don't think so, but I'm not certain.
Okay.
He hadn't been on TV enough that people would definitely know his voice. I'll put it that way.
Okay, go on.
So Dave Bobkratz goes and he buys a bunch of sodas. And the conference room is just not locked. So because they tell him on the phone, they tell him, and just don't even knock. Just walk right in and give us our sodas. Okay. So a few minutes later, Dave Bobkratz walks into this conference room with everyone and Vince McMahon in there and just goes, "Hey, Shane, here are your sodas." And Shane McMahon, you know, doesn't know what's going on. He says, "Oh, thank you. Thank you very much." And Dave Bobkratz leaves. And Vince turns to Shane and goes, "You're not going to actually drink that, are you?" And Shane says, "Oh, no. And they get rid of the sodas. But the story that I heard from a few people, including Jim, was Jim Cornette sitting there the whole time. And all he's thinking is, "Oh, my God, I know this is Dennis. I know Dennis just did this." And again, Dennis and his friends and his son, Mark, are sitting there watching into the room. They could see in the room. So they see Dave Bobkratz walking with the sodas. And they said everyone's face just dropped. They didn't know what was going on. They thought it was a crazy fan. And that is my Dennis Carluzzo story for the week. And we will be having more Dennises of the week in the weeks and months to come here on 605, the Superpodcast, the podcast that brought El Pibe Diaz to prominence.
That was beautiful.
You're very welcome. I actually went searching on the internet knowing I was going to do this to try to find a picture of Dave Bobkratz, and I couldn't.
Okay.
I know that at one of Dennis's shows, and we'll talk about this in the future, it's on a videotape that I made along with Mark Carluzzo. I had my video camera. We handed it back and forth. We actually did a fake in the locker room Fan of the Year award ceremony to Dave Bobkratz. And I think it was Mark, Dave Bobkratz, Dave's friend, and we had a fake Golga, the John Tenta gimmick Golga, you know, like the Cartman doll.
I mean, there were fake Golgas, like in fake Golga. Like, were you trying to convince him this was a real Golga, or was?
Well, no, it was someone working on the show. Dennis had a fake Golga.
Okay, so as there were many fake Golgas back then.
This one was Ricky O, who was a promoter.
Oh my God!
Because we used to call him Ricky Olga.
No, I mean I know of Ricky O. Trust me.
Yeah, so Ricky O was the Golga. And we presented Dave Bobkratz with Fan of the Year award, and he gave a speech. We have him giving a speech on tape. And this was just for our amusement. But very nice guy, Dave Bobkratz. Hope he's still out there. Hope he's still enjoying wrestling. And I hope he's not listening to this.
Ricky, like, I'm trying to remember if I considered doing, like, once, trying to remember. I think it was maybe for his. Was it one of his shows? There's like a story where like Phil and Ray from Death Valley Driver, like there was some kind of Ricky O bus trip that was supposed to happen, and then it just didn't. But like Ricky just left everyone stranded in Queens or something.
What?
Yes.
Well, where in Queens? I mean, that matters.
I don't remember. Oh, I'm gonna guess. By the what was the mall? The mall in Astoria.
Okay, I don't know the name of it, but I know where you're talking.
Queens
about.
Village Mall or whatever it's called.
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. And that if you look, it's from when Fat Frank died. I think Pete Stein told the story in that thread.
Okay.
If you look on Death Valley Driver, and yeah, I mean that's Ricky O.
I remember one of Dennis's shows. Actually, this made me think of it. It was the day of the Chiller Theater Convention in 1999. Mm-hmm. And I remember because I bought a Chiller Theater shirt that I still wear in the wintertime. It's a long sleeve shirt with like really cheaply made like pictures of like Bill Lugosi and other. It's the worst shirt.
Is there a picture of Zachary on it?
No, unfortunately.
Really?
No. My favorite Zachary story, real quick aside, was they had him, the Grateful Dead had him at one of their New Year's Eve show. He was going to come on stage in his coffin, pop out of the coffin and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Grateful Dead." And they wheel him out on stage and the coffin won't open.
Oh, no.
He's pounding the coffin, and he finally gets the coffin open after minutes. And he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, the fucking Grateful Dead." But anyway, so Dennis ran a show the same day as Chiller Theater, not too far from it. And because it was Chiller Theater, he was able to get a deal on Mil Mascaras because Mil Mascaras was at the Chiller Theater convention.
Now, was it that guy Mike who had booked him?
I don't
at
know.
Chiller okay, we'll talk about this after the show.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you that. But
okay.
What I do remember about it is you hear all these stories about Mil Mascaras and his mask, and I just recently finally saw a video of him unmasked, and it blew my mind.
Oh, really?
But Mil Mascaras, yeah, that'll go in the playlist.
Okay.
Mil Mascaras wrestled that day, and then he took a shower in his mask and his socks.
So he had his foot amputated too, I'm sure.
Yeah, let's start that rumor. But he wore his mask in the shower, like no one was going to see him.
This doesn't surprise me, though. I mean, didn't he do that?
I guess, it was just, you hear about these things, then you actually see it in person. It's like, wow, he really does shower with his mask on. Like, when does he take it off? Like, 'cause now he has a wet mask on his face. You never think about that. You never think about the problems.
But he's completely naked except for the mask and the socks.
I saw him go into the shower with his mask. I didn't see him naked. Other people said he was wearing his socks too. So I'm going to take them at their word.
Well, you know where your socks in a wet shower?
Why? Dude, if you're walking around in a wet mask, you're going to catch pneumonia. How does he not get sick? Like bronchitis or something?
I would think I would be more worried about like a fungus growing on the mask or something.
He's a man of 1,000 masks. He has plenty of masks to switch into.
Well, that's true.
Once he gets somewhere, but it's going to be
that's
wet.
true. As soon as he's like in the car or whatever, he can just switch masks.
What did Jim Ross used to call him? Mil Mascaras. Remember that?
I guess so.
Yeah, Mil Mascaras. So, once again, I want to apologize for everyone if this show is a little weird this week because I feel sick. And on top of feeling sick, I may have stayed up a little late last night drinking vodka. And what happened was I started reading this book I haven't read in years. It was a book I used to get such a kick out of with my friends, and I just found it in my collection. It is The Complete Idiot's Guide to Professional Wrestling, written by Captain Lou Albano and Bert Sugar. Captain Lou, of course, looks like Captain Lou. If you don't know Bert Sugar, he basically is a boxing reporter, really a legendary boxing reporter who later became just like this character of himself. He's dressed like he works for the Daily Planet in 1945.
Complete with hat.
Complete with hat and cigar and it says on the cover, "This is a book every wrestling fan needs." What wrestler gave that quote? What current champion when this book came out, Bix, gave the quote, "This is a book every wrestling fan needs"?
1999?
1999.
And this was a then current champion?
Yes. Who recommended this book?
I'm going to guess this is someone in one of the two major promotions?
Yes.
I'm going to say Bret the Hitman Hart.
Goldberg, WCW champion.
Well, sure.
Here's a list of wrestling federations. I'm going to name the initials, and you name for me the wrestling federation.
Okay.
WCCW.
These are all going to be wrong, so that should be World Class Championship Wrestling. Now, see, this is where it's tricky because the thing in wrestling books for years, was that WCW would be World Class Wrestling.
Well, that's all over this book. WCW is world class.
Okay, so what is WCCW then? I can't even.
West Coast Championship Wrestling.
Oh boy.
Yeah, what is that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, this thing's a mess. Here's the WWF Top 10.
Okay, for 1999.
I guess Shawn Michaels, Rocky Maivia, Owen Hart, The Undertaker, Steve Austin's number 5, 6 is Dude Love, 7 is Kane, 8 is Ken Shamrock, 9 Hunter Hearst Helmsley, 10 Taka Michinoku.
And of course, Shawn Michaels, who is presumed retired.
What is this list? It says the Complete Idiot's reference card. A Complete Idiot is definitely...
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Of course, now, the thing that most people know this book from is that there's a real names list that includes The Rock's real name being Rocky Melvin.
I got to find that page. Here's one. Hidden Gimmicks is the name of this article. An exhaustive list of gimmicks used in wrestling is impossible. Here's just a sample.
Vicodin, Halcyon.
Of the kind of things you'll see appearing in the ring. I'm going to name the wrestler, Bix. See if you can name the gimmick as listed here.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Funk.
Branding Iron?
And in parentheses, what's the nickname of the branding iron?
I'm going to go with Old Betsy.
The Double Cross.
Okay, just because I went with that because I'm just going to assume they're going to name it like a whip or something, and there was no name.
New Jack.
Everything.
Name one.
Cookie Sheet?
Fork.
I mean, he was doing that a lot around then, though. So that's not ridiculous.
Jerry Lawler.
Chain.
Knuckle Chain. Very good. Lex Luger.
Lex Flexor.
Metal plate surgically inserted into forearm.
Well, that's true, though.
It is. This book is known, like, you could just pick pages and it's wacky stuff. Here's a quote from Lou Albano. There's a section throughout the book called Captain Lou's Corner with a little caricature of him. It looks like it was drawn by Mad Magazine. All of my bleeding has come from steel cage matches, where almost every time you ran your face into the fence surrounding the ring, you'd cut yourself on its sharp edges. I mean, anyone who's seen my face knows that I'm no raving beauty, but I'm not likely to purposely cut my face with a razor or anything else and become even less of a beauty.
Here's the thing.
If
this was any other wrestler...
Yeah, exactly.
But there was no wrestler who has been seen more times blatantly cutting his forehead with a razor blade on camera, on video, than Captain Lou Albano. Do you remember any of the really weird Aftermag stuff, though? Like, when they do the, the poster in the middle and they'd have the little bio. Like, I remember the Brett one being very weird. Like, it said he had like held the IWGP heavyweight title after beating Ted DiBiase.
I don't remember that, no.
And then, do you remember the first PWI Almanac, though?
Vaguely.
And the section about Japanese wrestling?
No, what was it?
It was because they just made stuff up. It was like, War is the only promotion in Japan that holds cage matches. Their main events are usually 6-man tag matches in a steel cage, when they never had cage matches, ever. That type of thing.
Here's, I'm not going to read through the whole section, but the name of the section is pretty funny. A sushi selection of evil Orientals.
Oh, my God.
A gaggle of goose-stepping Germans. Who wrote this? Redskis.
Burt Randolph.
Redskis, Ruskies, and commie creeps.
Is George Gordienko on there?
Let's see. George Gordienko.
The one actual commie?
No, they have Comrade Soldat and Tovarich Maxim Gorky.
What? Who? What?
A bearded brother tag team wrestled in Canada and on the West Coast during the 1950s.
Oh, sure.
Ivan Kalmukov.
Right.
Ivan Kamarov.
I don't think that's real.
Ivan Koloff.
Well, I know he's real.
Nikita Koloff.
Sure.
The Russian Brute.
Why are you going to put him on there?
The Russian Assassin. Soldat Ustinov. Igor Volkov. Nikolai Volkov. Nikolai Zolotov. Boris Zukov.
Now, what spelling did they go with for Boris Zukov? The WWF spelling?
Zukhov.
That's the WWF spelling. Okay.
An emirate of oily sheiks. This is my favorite one.
Yeah, let's finish on this for now.
Sheikh Adnan El-Kaisi. Wrestled from 1959 through 1977. Heel manager that after that worked out of the Dallas Sportatorium through the early 1990s.
Yeah, that's he became Skandar Akbar, I guess.
Yeah, well, I do want to finish on this one. The Twilight Zone contingent, where it lists all the crazy, like, Leatherface, star of the 1990s, wrestles in Japan and in the Mid-South circuit. What Mid-South circuit?
Well, with Memphis, you know how people would.
Bases his character on a psycho killer in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Claims his mask is made out of the faces of vanquished foes. Mm-hmm. Vampiro Americano. Real name, Justin Bradshaw.
No, that's real. He was Vampiro Americano in Monterey.
Real name's Justin Bradshaw?
Well, no.
Who played the character during the 1980s?
That's not true.
Vampiro Canadiense. A Canadian bloodsucker who terrorized Mexico City in the 1990s.
He was a babyface.
Yeah. I'm going to go through this and see if I can find that real name list one of these days.
Okay. But I wonder how much. I'm sure you can get it for a penny plus shipping on Amazon. I would hope.
Absolutely.
Unless it's got this weird Gary Hart thing going for it.
Look at this. The Snail Mail Express newsletters. The first newsletter listed that you can subscribe to is Figure 4 Newsletter, care of the Youth Wrestling Federation. Box 426, Woodinville, Washington, 98072. That's the first newsletter listed here.
Well, good.
Yeah.
What's the worst newsletter listed there? Lariat? Is Lariat listed?
Lariat was really good when it first started.
Well, if you say so.
Figure 4 Newsletter, Mat Marketplace, On the Mat, Pile Driver, Pro Wrestling Monthly, Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly, Pro Wrestling Update, Western Ringside Report.
Wait, Mat Marketplace was still around in 99?
I assume.
Yeah.
The Wrestling Chatterbox, Wrestling Down Under, Wrestling Lariat, Wrestling Observer, Wrestling Perspective, Wrestling Then and Now.
I guess that's all of them at least for that point in time. I don't know what else you would list.
I guess those are the big ones. Those are most of the big
Wrestling
ones.
Then and Now wasn't that good by 99, though.
Care of the Youth Wrestling Federation. That's so funny.
Oh, my God.
Here's a rundown of weights and heights.
I've had enough of this.
I'll never have enough of this.
Oh, okay.
Move on, Bix.
So, earlier, some of the stuff I was tweeting, I was looking at those Southeastern results, and I was thinking about, like, one, like, cause the period I was looking at, they had a really good, for, like, a smaller territory, they had a lot of, like, really, like, decent names of really good guys. So I'm just trying to think, like, what defines a smaller territory? B, what would be, like, a more impressive roster for a smaller territory? We don't have to stick with this too long. I think we'll jump off of it to something else. But, like, what defines a small territory to you?
Well,
is it roster size? Is it?
I think it's territory size. I mean, that's the way. When you said that, that was my first thought. Like, it's the size of the territory.
Well, it can be both, though. Because
I guess it would be both, because Georgia technically was not that big.
Right, and then someplace like Texas, which covered a lot of space, but once especially once it was just Dallas as the office, and they weren't booked into Houston or San Antonio anymore. I mean, they small crew, but still covering. You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
How do you define what's a small territory? What's a larger territory? I mean, you know what a big territory is. You just don't know what a small territory is.
I always thought of Kansas City as a small territory.
Right, but I mean, like, if you're thinking the big territory, you think more of a major territory. You'd think, AWA, Crockett, WWF, those types of places. And then maybe, Georgia at certain times.
AWA was probably the biggest in terms of size.
In terms of geography, yes.
Yeah.
Well, because it fanned out into so many
I don't know.
places.
I have different thoughts. Like, if you asked me, and I think kind of sizes, what's a small territory? I would say Kansas City. I would say Portland.
Southeastern.
Southwest.
Well, Southwest, once it became its own territory.
Yeah, it was one town territory in my eyes. Pensacola.
Yes. But is Memphis a small territory? Lee Jarrett era?
No, because Memphis to Nashville to Louisville to Jonesboro to Tupelo. That's a pretty big stretch. I think that's a bigger stretch than they had on the other side of the state with Southeastern.
Yes. I mean, there were times where Southeastern was literally just Knoxville.
But again, there were times with Memphis, like in 79, where the roster was very, very thin and you had very few wrestlers. And then there were times like 83 where you had more wrestlers than you've ever seen before.
Right. Giant surplus of wrestlers.
Yeah. Now, again, in that time, in 83, a large part of that was because Jerry Lawler and Lance Russell were prepared to go off on their own because Lawler felt ripped off that he didn't get the ownership percentage that Jerry Jarrett had promised him. Jerry Jarrett says that Lawler, he just forgot about it, and Lawler never reminded him or asked him for it. So before they settled, Lawler had called up tons of guys and had an entire territory ready to go. And that's why when they came back together, they had all these wrestlers, which made some of them expendable because, Lawler was going to go with Jimmy Hart and Jerry Jarrett would have kept Jim Cornette. And you had like a split. And that's why certain guys went, certain places. And you saw Bill Dundee and his crew kind of get pushed aside. First, they got sent to the Championship Wrestling from Georgia company out of Chattanooga. And then then that crew basically, without Frank Morrell and Norman Frederick Charles III, but that crew went to Mid-South.
Yeah, I guess so. Dundee, Cornette, Terry Taylor, Bobby Fulton. Yeah.
Carl Fergie.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I
never thought of it that way.
Yeah, either did I until I just said it. Other than Ken Wayne, Norman Frederick Charles III, Frank Morrell, who was Frank Morrell's partner? The Bounty Hunter?
Yeah, I think Jerry Novak.
Yeah. So, but, the core of that one, Bill Dundee, they were trying to get Bill Dundee out of there as much as they could just because Lawler and him were having issues. And, Bill Dundee was on the Jerry Jarrett side of what would have been a split. And Bill Dundee, they got him that booking job with Ole. That didn't last too long. And then they got Bill Watts to take him. And that was the best thing that could have happened to them. They got Bill Watts. Everything worked out for Watts, but they were just hoping to get rid of some of the talent they had.
Yeah, and then there was the trade, which, as Cornette always says, it's the only time anyone else ever got the better of a Jerry Jarrett business deal. Yeah. Watts got Dundee to book, Midnight Express and Cornette, Rock and Roll Express, Terry Taylor, Landell, sort of. Am I forgetting anyone?
Eventually PYT Express were in there.
Bobby Fulton, Tommy Rogers, sort of in there.
Yeah, sort of. And then, of course, the other way around.
Hacksaw Higgins, Rick Rude.
Masao Ito.
Jim
Neidhart.
And anyone else?
No. One of the interesting things I find about this whole thing, because it all happened right around the same time that Jarrett and Poffo made their deal. And at that point in time, Lanny Poffo was already in Mid-South.
And Randy Savage was going to come in. And then they made the deal, and Randy went in there, and eventually Lanny went in there with him. But imagine if Randy had gotten to Mid-South. That would have been the best thing ever. Randy Savage in 1984. Well, again, I don't know if that would have worked out with Bill Dundee as the booker, but... Gee, I wonder.
Yeah, I just put two and two together there. But, yeah, the Poffos had been on the outside, and they made that deal to do everything with Lawler. But... the whole story was that, they called Jerry Jarrett and they said, look, we're done. We've been building to this match for so many years. Let's finally do it. But before they even got to that point, they were ready because Randy Savage was also in Georgia at that time, wasn't he? Or
he worked the Thanksgiving Tag Tournament.
Yeah. And they were getting ready to bring him in for a push. I think they were doing videos with him on TV. I could be wrong, but I think they were. So that's two places he had a chance to go. Both fairly big territories.
Yeah, although Ole was not spending a lot of money at that point.
No, Ole, 1983, in 1983 is a year I've done a lot of research on. Ole ousts Jim Barnett, takes over the company, and Georgia's has tons of problems that year. They're advertising wrestlers who aren't there. Guys are disappearing. The Road Warriors get created. It's really probably the high spot of 1983. But, at the NWA convention that year, Ole has it out with the McMahons. They're going to war over towns in Ohio. And, by the end of that year, the ball's in motion for Vince to take over Georgia. He's already making his moves to get that time spot.
So as far as small territory, I guess that's just something, it's almost it when you see it type of thing.
Yeah, I would say Knoxville was a small territory.
So, as far to go back what I was talking about originally, I guess the type of crew they had in like 80, 81, so where you've got at different times. Should I pull up the thing I had earlier? But you've got everyone, Paul Orndorff, Masa Saito, Stan Lane, Steve, who was that? You had
Mark
the usual
Lewin.
guys, Mark Lewin, which I don't think I'd ever seen the Mark Lewin stuff from there. who else? Now I'm drawing a blank as to...
Well, the way I always like to look at it is where were they before and where were they after? Because that kind of tells you what that territory was in the scheme of their careers. I'm guessing Stan Lane was in Florida or Georgia right before it. And right after it probably went to Memphis for his run before he was in the Fabulous One.
Yeah, he's Stanley Lane at this point.
Yeah, Nature Boy Stanley Lane.
Well, you know why that is? Because Stan Lane is the only wrestler ever trained by Ric Flair.
That's right. And his partner in Florida was Brian St. John. Was he still tagging up with him there?
Not sure.
He wasn't in the territory. He's not on the card.
At least not on that card I was looking at earlier.
Okay. So Stan Lane, that's kind of the trajectory he was in right there. It was probably Florida, Georgia, Knoxville, and then into Memphis for his first run. Lewin didn't go to Florida again until when, 83?
That sounds right.
I'm not sure where Lewin was.
Singapore. I don't know.
Masa Saito was he started teaming with Fuji again after that in WWF.
Right.
So I'm not sure where he was right before.
Okay, so here's that card. So give me 1 second to pull
Let's hear the card.
Because this does not sound like a Knoxville card. So it's main event, grudge match, Maniac Mark Lewin, managed by the Great Mephisto versus Abdullah the Butcher, seconded by Kevin Sullivan. Tag title match, the Assassins, who I'm guessing are Jody Hamilton and Roger Smith here?
It's logical. It's not that far from Georgia.
Versus Mr. Wrestling 2 and Steve Kern. Baron von Raschke versus Ernie Holmes. I don't know if it's the Ernie Holmes.
I mean...
Who else would it be?
Yeah, I never heard of a second Ernie Holmes.
Dennis Condrey versus Terry Taylor.
Terry Layler.
Terry Layler is the one that likes black people.
Whoa.
And Stanley Lane versus Steve Regal.
What? Versus who?
Steve Regal. Mr. Electricity. All children 11 and under, $1 when accompanied by an adult, general admission only. So that is that does not sound like a Knoxville card. And I love Knoxville and I love Southeastern Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
But that's a fairly loaded card.
Von Raschke. I didn't know he worked.
Yeah, me neither. But I mean, and then like I was saying, you had Paul Orndorff coming in around that time, Mr. Saito.
When is it in 1980?
Let me look. Did I keep it on the clipping? Maybe early in the year. I don't remember. I mean, maybe
he was in Mid-South before that. He was certainly in Mid-South after that. Not for too much longer though. So I don't know if he was living in Georgia already.
So wait, who are we talking about now?
But in 1980, Von Raschke was in Georgia.
Oh, Von Raschke. Yeah.
No, I was talking about Orndorff.
Oh. Well, there was also with Georgia. I mean, there's also. When was the period where Georgia was being run by where Knoxville was being run sort of by Georgia?
Well, when Ric Flair and Blackjack Mulligan bought Knoxville,
that was after that.
But they got it from Jim Barnett, didn't they?
Maybe.
I believe they bought it from Jim Barnett. So Jim Barnett owned it at that point, and obviously he owned Georgia or owned one of the shareholders in Georgia. That makes some sense.
Okay. As I mean, if you're looking at it, Wrestling 2, Lewin and Abdullah, Von Raschke sort of sounds Georgia-ish.
Sullivan.
But it's also listed as Southeastern. I don't know if it was called Southeastern when it was part of Georgia.
So wait, what would have been the ownership? It would have been Ron Fuller selling to Jim Barnett and Jim Barnett selling to Flair Mulligan?
Well, I don't know who sold to... Well, I guess he sold... Because remember, it just kind of shut down for a while after the wrestling war.
Yeah, well, I mean... the war between the Fullers and Paphos really just decimated the area.
Yeah. I mean, they killed the town, but
yeah.
But I mean, that's like I'm trying to think is there any other what as far as uncharacteristic to the territory? I guess the period where you had Hansen, Ventura, Patera, and those guys in Memphis is sort of like that. Well,
yes and no, but I mean, they weren't there full time.
Well, Jesse was.
Was he?
I thought Jesse was, and Hansen was using it as a stopover between Japan tours.
Well, those are different times, though. Wait, Hansen was 80. Was he?
No, that was 83. It was because there's that tag match where it's also? Hansen and who is it? Hansen and Ventura against Idol. What is it? Idol and Lawler? Yeah, because those were the two feuds.
I mean, that's interesting because that goes back to what we were just saying about 1983. Memphis had just so many people.
Yes,
and those are. I mean, Ventura and Patera are big stars from the AWA. Right, Patera was already in the AWA at that point.
Yeah.
Huh. What was the relationship between Vern Gagne and Jerry Jarrett at that time?
Like, was there actually a relationship, or
Well, they're using Nick Bockwinkel. They're using the AWA.
But that's just really getting dates from Bockwinkel. I thought was what I thought.
Then they're getting dates from other guys on the territory.
Oh, during that period, yeah, because you're getting Blackwell and Patera and
Ventura.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's always the theory Scott Bowden and guys like that talk about where that Jarrett or Lawler figured that he could convince Vern to give him the title because it's only one guy.
Yeah.
But I don't really know. I don't really know that much about that. And going back to earlier, I forgot to mention with Luderoth and Jarrett. Do you know that there apparently was an actual relationship between Jerry Jarrett and Salvatore Luderoth?
No, get out of here.
So you know the whole thing that Mil Mascaris did a job in that stretcher match as a heel in 79 or whenever it was.
Has it been confirmed it was actually the Mil Mascaris?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
So the story, I think it's either in one of Scott Bowden's things or it was in Jarrett's book or maybe both, that like he got brought. I don't know if he explained why he brought Mil Mascaris in as a heel, as like the heel mystery partner or whatever it was, but like they got to talking and Jarrett was like, talking about how he was friends with Salvatore Luderoth from NWA conventions and stuff, and had stayed at his home in Mexico City and all that. And like after talking about that, Mascaris was like, "So, what do you want to do?" And that one thing led to another.
Wow. It's interesting. We talked 2 weeks ago about Jerry Jarrett's appearance on Jim Cornette's podcast.
Right, and he had his relationship with Vince Sr.
Yeah, he really had relationships with everyone. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to try to figure out like which promoters were more insular and which weren't.
Well, it sounds like Salvador Luderoth was a lot more hospitable than Paco Alonso.
I don't know. So where do we go from that? Or are we just about out of time, I guess? What do you think? I have to check because we had to stop. I guess we may or may not have stopped and started a few times. Only you will be able to tell, the listener. Yeah, I guess that's about. Yeah, I think we're about done. So, I mean, what else is there Is there anything else we wanted to discuss this week?
I don't know. Like I said, I've been sick, so I'm sort of not all the way here. I think in the next week or so, either next week or the week after, Bix and I will have some talk about the Tuesday Night at the Gardens book by Jim Cornette. We both have it in our hands, and we have been going through it. So we'll have some discussion about that, some notes.
Yes, we should do that.
I was happy to see in that book that it's part one, that there's going to be a second book going up to 82.
Right, because this only went through 75.
Right. So that next book will be really great, too.
Now, I have not watched the DVD yet. Have you?
I have. I'd seen a lot of that stuff previously, but I haven't actually watched the DVD.
Well, I realized because I didn't ask him if he put if he did it from like, because I don't know what his copy original of those films is, because that might be a better copy than I've ever seen.
I would guess that he got it directly from PM Film.
Well, no, he went in on it with Ron.
Oh, I did not know that.
That's why I'm saying, yeah.
So he basically, Ron Martinez had the films, wasn't going to transfer them, and Jim Cornette said, "Hey, if you transfer them,"
yeah, something like that.
Okay, that makes sense. That sounds like something he would do.
So yeah, I'm curious if he had, because I didn't ask him, like, if he has them on like SVHS or U-matic or something, then they probably look better than what we've seen. Because everything else we've seen is VHS transfer.
Yeah, now I got to watch it. You realize that?
Yes, me too.
That is really cool. I mean, what a great idea to have the book come out with DVDs. You know, besides the fact that he's been our guest and he's a friend, he really does such a good job when he puts out his merchandise. It's like perfect for a wrestling fan. You know, whether it's the Midnight Express scrapbook or those Jim Cornette, the early years DVDs, which they're not just these great off his masters, clips of him in Memphis.
Well, and I should say that. Well, I should say that first too, yeah, because he was talking about Beta. We were talking about that last week. That stuff he taped on Beta looks pristine.
Yeah.
If you ever want to get those DVDs he has on his site, those Jim Cornette the Rookie Year stuff, I mean, it's incredible how good it looks.
And each book, each DVD comes with a detailed booklet.
Right, those and
every single thing.
It's those and his Midnight Express Rarities DVDs too. All come with liner notes. I mean, like the trying to remember, the Midnight Express one does too, but the Memphis one has, the gates of all the shows he was at, he's working with detailed liner notes on each segment. I mean, it's really cool. And I hope he eventually does more DVDs because...
Yeah, there's another guy who does those Memphis season sets, but the quality is...
Rick.
Suspect on a lot of that stuff. I would love it if Jim did it, if he did like a season set of 1980, 81.
Well, I mean, a lot of that stuff is dubs of Jim's stuff.
Right, but by the time he releases it, it's some of it's really, really.
I mean, I know he tries to find the best he can though. Like, and some of the stuff, like his '79 set, like there's stuff I've seen before a zillion times that his is the best I've seen though.
Sure, but I think we could say that Jim probably has the best stuff of anyone when it comes to that.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, people who don't know, I mean, he has, even though not all of it is like master tapes broadcast and only a small amount would be. Jim has the best Memphis wrestling collection of anyone.
Right, and in terms of local promos, we found out that he was getting stuff from Ken Wayne and from Danny Davis, who were taping other towns to see their stuff.
Right, getting the B show with the house show matches. And
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the treasure trove of Memphis wrestling right there.
Yeah, and
other than whatever Jimmy Hart is rumored to have hidden in his closet. What's the story behind that, Bix?
Yeah, because I guess we didn't talk about this on the air. So I'm trying to remember when I first heard about it. But someone had told me years ago that like on the Opening the Vault show that was on WMC and also on America One, where they showed out Memphis stuff, like for a while it was like just the same stuff you'd always seen, and sometimes I think they even sourced some VHS stuff. And then there were like late in its run, I think it was more late in its run, maybe there were a few earlier on too. They had some stuff like that no one had ever seen before, like when Paul Orndorff was in Memphis. And later I found out that came from Jimmy Hart's collection, and Lawler and everyone else was like, why have we never seen this before? So he has stuff that no one else has, but there's not a lot known about it. And then like a while back, Lance Russell asked me if I knew if anyone had any kind of video or film of when he announced the deaths of Sam Bass, Frank Hester, and Pepe Lopez in that car accident in '76. I said, no, I'm guessing it doesn't, but if it does, Jimmy Hart probably has it, because I know he has stuff that other people don't. And then Lance said to me that once he was at Jimmy's house and saw that there was like a closet full of reels of videotape and films and stuff. So he clearly has other stuff. And like I know people who got like stuff that he saved. There were like WWF, like either like copies of master tapes or whatever. So I mean, he has stuff that he's collected.
It raises the question about like, there's always that perpetual search for everything that's missing. And you always hear, oh, this is gone, LA, all the LA's gone. There's no Amarillo.
Well, let's talk about this for a minute then. So as long as we're on this track. Okay. So as far as what we know, so what are we talking about? What we don't think there is anything of, or what the folklore is that does exist?
Well, let's talk about what we know does exist that isn't out. For instance, and the name is slipping my mind right now. Who ran in the Georgia territory? Had was it Marion?
Fred Ward?
Yeah, Fred Ward's daughter has all those old television shows.
Well, she claims to, and then people we know who may be obvious made a good faith offer to see it and to buy it, and they wouldn't even listen or show it. So no one's ever seen it, though. Allegedly they have it, but no one's ever actually seen it.
I heard that going back to the 90s, that she had it.
Right. Now, there's also the thing that the TV station in Lexington has all the ICW shows.
Right. Now, that I heard also.
Well, because who was it that got it originally? Because I know people who have copies of it, because there were like those couple shows from '81, like the Miss Macho and Man Angle with Pez Whatley. That's not from the PM Film stuff.
Well, before we go any further, in case anyone's never seen it,
yeah,
ICW TV, which is amazing, just in its cheapness.
Yes,
it's fast. Sometimes you see weather maps like on the set of the show, and they did an angle where Macho Man with his bodyguard Crusher Broomfield, later to be the One Man Gang, he's out there wrestling, and Ron Garvin and Lanny Poffo come out, and their clothes are kind of ripped up. It looks like they've been in some sort of scuffle. And they announce that they have the winner of the Miss Macho Man contest, and they bring out a giant box. And in that box is Pistol Pez Whatley tied to a chair, dressed like a woman.
with a stuffed bra.
With a stuffed bra. And I always remember...
And bound and gagged.
Bound and gagged. Ron Garvin has this one line I love. He goes, "We sort of kidnapped him." Just admitting on the air to his crime.
I love how you didn't try to do the Ron Garvin accent, but you still got the delivery down. It's like, yeah, we sort of kidnapped him. What
is Lenny Poffo that has like one of those weird Lenny Poffo moments where he goes, follow the bouncing ball, I love being a boy, or whatever he said. Or maybe it was a girl, I love being a girl. It was like, what? What the hell are you saying? And then it ends up with Macho Man and Crusher Broomfield finally breaking up, and Randy's just like such a maniac on any of the ICW studio stuff that exists or any of the interviews he did. He's just such a maniac. It's amazing stuff.
You mean like the promo where he implies that him and Bob Borton have a sexual relationship?
What?
And you've never, it's on, I hope this is still on YouTube. If you look up there are ICW Savage promos on YouTube, and one of it's like talking about how him and Bob Borton help each other out. And he's like, we even satisfy each other's.
What the hell?
Or something like that.
I'm guessing it's about a week before Bob Orton left the territory.
Maybe that's how he got hepatitis C.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Bob Orton being there, Ron Garvin being there, those are vestiges of the Knoxville promotion.
Right. So anyway, what do you know? Because you were around them, like those couple shows. What did you hear about? Because I always heard those came from the TV station.
I had heard, and I don't remember the original source of who told me this.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that the Lexington television station had a bunch, if not all, of the old ICW shows, but wouldn't let them out because they had a good relationship with the Poffo family.
Right.
And actually, but
someone got a couple shows out.
Right. Either a year ago or 2 years ago, I was contacted by, I forget the name of the WWE archivist.
The guy who's the WWE archivist on Twitter.
Benjamin Brown, I think.
Okay.
That they were doing a Macho Man DVD, which was when I first found out about that.
Mm-hmm.
And they had Lanny cooperating and the mother cooperating. And they were looking for footage. And I said, yeah, why don't you call the television station? I mean, the rumor has always been that they had it. And I don't know if they did or didn't. But I was hoping that they would. And, some of that stuff would get out. Like the floodgates would open. And then someone would find a way to sneak it out of Stamford, because sometimes footage does escape. But yeah, so that was always the rumor about that stuff.
And it seems to be true, but I know someone I can ask, but because I don't understand the whole deal with that. So there's that. The Houston stuff we knew existed, but we didn't know what the deal was, and now it's coming out, so that's good. NWAClassics.com.
Right, but it seems that most of it is from the Mid-South era.
I mean, that might be just because it's later, but I mean, it's the stuff they're uploading. It's just the order that the company that they sent the stuff to has been sending it to them in.
Right, and look, it's great stuff regardless, but I would like to know how much of that material is before the split with the Dallas office. Yeah,
I'm not sure if Bruce Tharpe has separate copies of the run sheets he could look at. Like, if he has a separate copy of like the indexes that he could look at while he doesn't have all the stuff. But yeah, so there's that. I mean, but now that's trickling out. Trying to remember what else. Like the different version of Montreal, like someone like Pat LaPrade would know. I'm trying to, because there were like those 6 shows that came out that there was a guy that got from the TV station, but I think that was it. But then what about, I don't know about the other Montreal promotions. I mean, Puerto Rico, WWC obviously exists and they still have it. I feel like I'm forgetting something that should exist, or that we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we still don't know what PM film Ron Martinez had that wasn't transferred, but we always heard that there was a lot of stuff.
Well, because there was stuff like I've gotten copies of stuff that people bought from him that were not in his catalog.
Yeah, so there you go.
And then there was other stuff, and the ownership thing is all hinky because like both him and Todd Okerlund were saying at the same time that they own the collection. But Todd, Todd's company had transferred everything and had stuff on their website and on their YouTube channel that was not in the catalog. So I would guess that it was Todd's company, which is, Classic Wrestling, and they even have a YouTube channel with some good stuff that has everything. So
And what does Todd Okerlund own? What footage?
it's that company. It's that classic wrestling company. So I believe it's really just, they did those AWA pay-per-views and then those other pay-per-views after Vince bought AWA. But I think it's just the PM Film stuff that they own. Because then everything else, unless they did buy the Abrams UWF stuff, I can't remember.
And they said Billy Corgan bought the Bob Loose collection except for the videos, right?
Right, because he was too worried about Vince issues.
Okay, that's weird.
Once on Wrestling Classics, Ray Gunkel's daughter or granddaughter posted saying she had a couple videotape reels.
Wow, really?
And I tried to get in touch with her, but I never heard back, and I never heard anything happening with it. I mean, some of this is... The thing is, there are probably, scattered reels of stuff everywhere, of all sorts of stuff.
Vince, I mean, what is Billy Corgan afraid of? That because Vince bought the AWA catalog, he would own the rights to the stuff that was in Chicago using AWA talent?
I guess, and they've used Bob Loose stuff on the AWA shows, and something like that.
I don't know. So who owns it? Bob Loose's daughter owns that?
Well, I don't know, I guess. But also, if he was buying it, I mean, he was buying the merchandise. He's not doing anything with that, unless they were asking a lot of money for that, so it didn't make sense to buy it unless he knew for sure that he could use it.
And how different is that from the Chicago footage that PM Film had?
Which they didn't have Loose.
Oh, no, they had Indianapolis.
They had Indianapolis, and there's definitely more than they sold because that's some of the stuff Classic Wrestling had up.
Right. Now, my philosophy was always, in terms of searching for lost footage, a good bet to start. And you may not get any results, but I always thought it was good to start with contacting local stations from when professional wrestling was smaller, in case they still have 1-inch or 2-inch tape somewhere. If they have a storeroom, if they have a storage space.
Hi, I'm a crazy wrestling fan.
No, I'm a wrestling historian. I wonder who I could talk to. We know that this show was taped or aired on this network from this time to this time, and we were just trying to, put history back together again and find missing pieces to this puzzle. You present yourself like a decent human being and a reputable person. Usually, you get a nice response.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I've always had good results.
There were whispers that the pre-WWF Maple Leaf Wrestling existed and was not owned by WWF.
Where did it exist?
No one knows. There's a guy
that existed, but there isn't a rumor about who has it.
Right, there's a guy that ended up back when it was sort of easy for you to try to get in touch with who ran that stuff with WWE. So a fan could just call. I forget what. I think he just went through their phone tree and it worked. It was just something ridiculous like that. And he talked to the guy, and this was I mean, I know this guy. He doesn't. I don't think he would make anything like this up. And the guy mentioned somehow Maple. I guess the guy I know asked about Maple Leaf Wrestling, and he said, "Oh, I've seen it. We don't have it, but I've seen it, and it's incredible."
Let me ask you this, Bix. A little side topic with this. To the best of our knowledge,
as if we haven't side topicked enough, but go ahead.
I feel like you have a little bit of a background in this because you've been doing so much legal research recently.
Yeah,
but with a lot of this old wrestling,
sort of, but not exactly.
With a lot of this old wrestling, how much of it would and what would it take for some of it to fall into the public domain?
Oh, you asked this because I've looked this up separately. Okay, the thing with public domain is, and this is for me primarily looking at the Cornell legal law school website because they have some nice layman stuff. I had discovered this from when I was looking at Wikipedia, and I believe I was just happened to be looking at the Wikipedia entry for the sitcom Rhoda, the Mary Tyler Moore spinoff, and I noticed there were all these professional on-set photos. And I'm but it's Wikipedia because Wikipedia doesn't use copyrighted stuff. So, and they explained, under terms of blah, 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 and I think they may even link the Cornell thing, that if it's from a certain period and there's no copyright date, there's no copyright notice on the thing, then it's public domain. So I looked up a little more. Apparently, if something's before 77 or through 77 and there's no copyright notice, then it's public domain. And then from 78 or late 77 through early 89, there's no copyright notice and it was not registered within 5 years, then it's public domain.
Interesting. That could be a fun little project to try to see what is out there that belongs to all of us now.
Well, yeah. If there's a wrestling show and it's through 1977, and there's no copyright notice, then it should be public domain, at least according to what I've read.
And how does it work? Because I know DDP recently did a documentary about Jake the Snake, and they said they used WWF footage without WWF permission because they were able to get a loophole for educational purposes or documentary purposes. Do we know anything about that?
I don't know much about that other than I think they're telling the truth.
I mean, for instance, let's say you created a website, like wrestling history, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if wrestling.
Yeah, I don't know if they used the word educational purposes though. I think it was a documentary thing.
But if you created a site called Wrestling History, where it's an educational wrestling site that tries to tell history in an accurate portrayal and produce mini documentaries to show it, there potentially would be a way to do that and use footage even if it's owned by them.
I guess it's something to look into.
Yeah, it is. It very much is.
Gee, I wonder why you're thinking of this.
Because it bothers me that Wrestling History, they own all this footage and then they present this completely slanted and inaccurate version of history.
Yes.
And, there really isn't too many other industries that get away with that kind of thing. But they do.
Although there are reasons why it's good that because they're the ones who can store everything and blah, 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 and will keep it preserved. And
No, I give them credit for storage and, transfer.
And hopefully more will be coming out again with the network. We'll see.
But regardless, it's what they decide to release. And It's their version of history on their documentaries and what they put out. And their version of history is fucked. It has always been fucked, and it's never going to change. And I always try to see if there's a way that you can create an accurate wrestling history, a visual wrestling history, and put it out there so that the kid who is right now becoming a wrestling fan, who gets interested in wrestling history and wants to look back, there is a resource there. There aren't textbooks on professional wrestling. There are good books, but there isn't
the Idiot's Guide to Professional Wrestling.
Right, but there isn't like a website there isn't like a main website where you can go and not just read things but see things.
Right, they're all all your wrestling history divided up, your results and whatever is wrestling data and cage match. You got your Wikipedia for certain things, and you've got your territory specific wrestling history sites, and you've got your results sites, and you've got your and so on and so forth.
Right, but there's no visual wrestling history, and I feel like that's something needed. And I always want to try to find the way to make that an actual feasible thing. And when I heard DDP say that, I lit up. I said, wait a minute, so if you make a documentary you could just use other people's footage?
And DDP's on good terms with them too, so he wouldn't just do it.
Right,
even if they weren't able to arrange a proper deal, he wouldn't just do it if he knew it could get him in trouble with them.
Well, anyway, if anyone knows anything about this kind of stuff, hit us up on Twitter and let us know what you know. Yes. But it's certainly something worth looking into.
Yes, I get it. Is that it for now then?
That's it for me. I can't breathe out of my nose.
Oh, jeez.
I'm dying over here.
Yes, I love how we were finishing up and then we got sidetracked on that, but that's this show.
That's our passion, is tape trading, so it ends up coming back to that.
So
that is our show for this week, and thank you for sitting through it.
You sound miserable.
I feel like PB Diaz. I feel just so awful. PB Diaz looks like he got off easy compared to how I'm feeling.
He was back a week later, so.
He was back a week later, according to what we've heard.
Apparently a stuntman, too. But I don't think he did that on purpose.
Can you imagine? I love, I said it in that clip, and I know the YouTube video has kind of gotten passed around a whole
Yes,
bunch.
we haven't mentioned it on the show, that if in case by some chance you didn't see it, I'm guessing you did if you're listening to this, did make a YouTube video of syncing up Cornette watching the PB Diaz video, which is on my YouTube channel. If you just look up Jim Cornette, I labeled it Jim Cornette shoots on PB Diaz because of the whole YouTube Jim Cornette shoots on phenomenon. Not just Cornette, but everyone now. It's like, if you look up the YouTube channel that Jim Ross's podcast has now, it's guest, shoots on whatever, or guest shoot interview. So,
well, if you just put Cornette PB in search.
Well, yes, I would hope so.
It comes up right away. Cornette PB, even Jim PB came up for me the other day. But I said on there, and it almost sounds like it was a joke, but it wasn't. But when trying to figure out who his opponent was, the man with the sword.
Right, and we had learned that it was a fake Pirata Morgan.
It really was. I said it on there, and you may have thought, what a...
Oh, no, it was a fake... Oh, you didn't realize? No, it is... Oh,
Yeah,
I knew it was
really
a fake
is.
Pirata Morgan. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a fake Pirata Morgan that they had in Argentina. Who looked nothing like a pirate. I've never seen a pirate wear a bright yellow shirt.
But he had that scabbard. Do you like that I used the word scabbard?
That's pretty good. I say we want to get El Pibe Diaz on the show. I want to get one of those kids on the show. I want to know what was going through their mind. What happened backstage when they ran back there with his lifeless Corcus?
So how are we finishing this up? You take the
Corcus. Why did I say Corcus? I'll finish it up. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'll be much healthier next week. I promise.
I hope so. Take some vitamin C.
I'll take some vitamin C, vitamin D. I'll take all sorts of stuff. Maybe some
NyQuil.
Yeah, NyQuil, DayQuil. But Bix started it, so I guess I get to end it.
Yeah, but the plugs and whatever. Follow me on Twitter.
Plugs. Yeah, Bix, you have all these plugs. Now, you learned your lesson last week. Jim Cornette really finally let you have it because you've been getting away with this for too long. This lackadaisical plugs, like, oh, I guess you could see me here, and I guess let's hear like a real hard sell. Give me a hard sell once at least for all your stuff.
Follow me on Twitter at David Vix. Follow Brian on Twitter at Great Brian Last. New Fighting Spirit magazine, I think, is out as you read this. I believe it should be. I mean, as you listen to this, what am I thinking? Well, it's late as we're recording this. With my article on Nick Bockwinkel. Also, New Figure 4 Weekly and all that other good stuff is out. Yeah, that's it. I guess that's it for now. Oh, Between the Sheets this week is Al Getz talking about this week in history in 1995, including Medusa throwing the belt in the trash, Vince McMahon's lawyer's secret husband, the Stu Hart birthday show with the WWF versus WCW match that no one talked about at the time for some reason, all sorts of good stuff. And yeah, I guess that's it. So, Brian?
No, my Corcus is done for the evening. For David Bixenspan, I am the Great Brian Last, and until next time,
tally-ho.
Tally-ho!
Tally-ho.
Let's not act emotionally. Let us stop and consider what we are doing. Whatever happens, it is not the end of the world.